Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Tallarico, your guest for this evening's edition of Higher Ed Live, the weekly web show for marketing and web professionals. And you can tune in to Higher Ed Live on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on higheredlive.com and join in on the conversation on Twitter using Higher Ed Live hashtag. And you can also follow me at Donna Tallarico. I'm the Director of Integrated Communications at Elizabethtown College, and that's in South Central Pennsylvania, not too far from Harrisburg and Lancaster, and the sweetest place on earth, you probably have heard of it, Hershey, Pennsylvania. So at E-Town, we're a school of about 1,900 traditional undergraduate students, a small private liberal arts school, and there I handle the official college social media channels, web content, creative writing, and serve as editor of the campus magazine and news website. So like a lot of you watching, I wear a lot of hats and a little bit of everything. So tonight's show is all about how to get people to stop stalking and start talking. And it's all about audience engagement, getting people to share, to use hashtags, and join in on the fun. So our guests tonight are going to share some cool things that they have going on in their own social spaces, and I'll probably chime in about some things we're doing at Elizabethtown College. And if you're doing something cool, feel free to tweet about it during the show so we can all see what you're doing. And in addition to our guests sharing real-world examples, we're also going to talk about where these ideas come from, how they're executed, and how they measure success. So before we get into that, I'm going to give a few shout-outs to some of our sponsors. So Omni Update is the leading web content management system, or CMS, provider for higher education. The company's web CMS, OU Campus, is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. Want to launch a mobile web solution via CMS but not ready to implement your full site? Hear how TC College did it. We're tweeting a link about that now. And Higher Ed Live is sponsored by Integral, the creators of the Schools app, a private network aimed at connecting incoming students to build community and impact enrollment. Check out their latest research with partner institution, University of Delaware, on Schools app membership versus campus visit and the correlation to enrollment outcomes. We're tweeting the link to the case study now. So now it's time to introduce tonight's panel of guests. So I thought rather than me introduce them to get them warmed up and to get their wheels turning, I'd have them introduce themselves. So we can start with, I guess we'll go in the order that we're showing up here in our Hangout. So we'll start with Becca.
Hi, everybody. My name is Becca Ramspot, and I'm a writer and social media specialist at Frostburg State University. I lead our social media group on campus. It's made up of faculty and staff and hopefully some students this fall, and I'm excited to learn from my co-guests and Donna and share some great ideas tonight. Thanks for having me.
Great, thanks for being here. So next we'll go to Hilary.
Hi everyone, I'm Hilary Frazier, and I am the Senior Social Media Specialist at the University of Michigan. I facilitate our UMich Students account, which is our student Twitter account, as well as manage all of our central social media channels from Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, everything, as well as our blog and our social media newsletter. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And next we have Ryan.
Hi, my name is Ryan McGuire. I'm social media editor at the University of Delaware. I work here in the Office of Communications and Marketing. This is my first Higher Ed Live. I'm very excited to be here.
All right, thanks for joining, and I'm so happy to have all three of you here. So, so the idea for this presentation, I guess, was inspired by a presentation I did not too long ago at the web conference at Penn State called How to Get People to Participate, Not Just Spectate. So, so it's kind of based on that idea, but instead of me talking about E-Town, we have three guests that are going to talk about what they're doing to engage their audience. So I thought I would just point out, because in my research for this show, I learned that University of Michigan was recently honored as the #1 best and most collaborative large school in the United States. So, so I think some of the things we're going to hear about from UMich will show us how they got that honor. And we'll send a tweet out to a blog post that they wrote about that. So, so we'll kick things off, I think, by talking about campaigns or recurring features and promos that we do to engage prospective and current students. I think they're kind of one and the same because so much of the research shows that prospective students want to hear from current students, and then also if we have active social communities, the prospective students are going to see that and hopefully want to be part of it too. So one of the cool things that I thought we could talk about was University of Michigan has a student-run account called UMich Students, where each week a different student takes over the student-run account. And I just have to throw in a sidebar that for a global business class I just took, without getting into details, I had to do some research on Sweden, and I found out that Sweden, the country, actually has a resident tweet for the country once a week. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's kind of what you're doing, Hilary, there. Instead of Sweden or the world, it's the university. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the Sweden account is actually where the idea originated from for the UMich Students account.
Okay.
In addition, our Vice President of Communications spawned the idea with our social media director and Dick Costolo, the CEO of Twitter, who is a UMich alum. So they all kind of just, brainstormed this idea. It would be really cool to have students tweet to kind of give a student perspective to prospective students, current students, and alumni to really just engage with students they wouldn't have a chance to reach on a daily basis because our campus is so big and we have such a big student body. So then we kind of just wanted our students to have a voice and they can just engage in a different way that they never would have a chance to. So we got the idea for UMich Students, and we decided that, we really trust in our students and we want them to have as much freedom as possible. And of course, there's a little bit of policy behind it, but for the most part, it's just our students talking about their life, their experience, and it's really cool to see week by week every student is completely different from the week before, and it's just, a really great experience that our students take as a true honor.
That's great. And so the students that tweet each week, do they get following? I mean, is there conversations and things
yeah,
like that
absolutely.
happening?
I mean, we've had conversations from anywhere of Desmond Howard tweeting the account, Dahani Jones, Dick Costolo, and then, our students interacting with each other, interacting with other high school students, with alumni, and with each other, and it's a way for them to kind of meet up with each other and hear about other groups and organizations that they might not know anything about, or, if it's athletics, or if a student is tweeting from a particular event that someone wasn't able to attend, it's a really good way for them to engage with each other.
Okay, great. And one last question about this. How do students become the UMich account for the week?
So if a student is interested in tweeting for the account, on the actual background of our Twitter page for the UMich Students account, it says, interested in tweeting, email umsocial@umich.edu, which is an email that comes to me. Or a student will just tweet the account and say, hey, I think this is really awesome. I want to participate in it. How do I get to tweet? And then the current student will usually offer up some information. From there, they would send me an email, and I would ask, why do you want to tweet? Why do you think that you would be a good tweeter for UMich students? What would you want to talk about? Maybe what groups or organizations are you involved in? And then I ask for them to provide their Twitter handle so I can sense some background of what's going on, what they tweet about usually. And then I'll just schedule for them to start tweeting. And they'll come in and they'll sign a release form for me, just kind of saying if they do anything that might be really not necessarily controversial, but if they are using strong language or if they're posting inappropriate photos, we can kind of cut them off from the account. And then I'll take their photo, and it's pretty much just from there. I look over the account, but I don't really monitor it in a way of saying I'm not allowed to post certain things.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
so you're done.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought there was some feedback there. Sorry about that. So now we'll move on to Ryan. Just met you at a conference earlier last week, but can you talk a little bit about your Student Ambassador Program? We have something at Elizabethtown College that we call the E-Team, but you are a much larger school.
Well, now I won't see you more.
45 students.
Yes, at the University of Delaware we have something called the Social Media Ambassadors Program. There are about 45 student volunteers. They apply, and there are standards each student has to meet. They all get officially branded University of Delaware Twitter accounts, and their job is basically to tell the story of life as a student at UD. They cover events here on campus. They build their own following. And it's a great way for them to experience for the first time kind of running a professional social media account for a professional organization. And then we also get to use the content that they create to share on the university's accounts. We get to post we get to see stuff from them that it's the kind of stuff that we as employees can't always get, and the kind of stuff that other students want to see.
Okay, great. And with both yours and Hilary's initiative there, I mean, it definitely takes some trusting of the students. And I know that I've just heard in where I work and in other conferences I've met people that they're sometimes a little scared to let students take over. What do either of you have anything to say about that, about how you build that trust?
We actually, at the University of Delaware, we go through an application process for everyone who wants to be an SMA. There are certain standards that they have to meet when they apply, and then we have them sign contracts, and then there are just standards that they have to keep up with through the semester. And I mean, what's really great about it is as they learn as they go, and they're getting this guidance from us. We provide, we have meetings once per month where we'll bring in guest speakers, and they get this professional experience. So I mean, there is a lot of trust that we put into them, but we're sure to pick the best students that we can get, and it's been good so far. It's been really good.
Okay, great. Now, Becca, I know that you are a huge fan of the visual web, and you have this philosophy that, you know, mostly everything should be shared with a picture, and you're doing something really cool with the hashtag #InstaFrostburg, where it's kind of a cross-platform. You've shared some of those pictures on Pinterest and some other places. So how do you use that hashtag to share what's happening at Frostburg?
Well, like my colleagues here, I'm a big advocate of user-generated content, letting our students and faculty and staff and alumni add their voices to telling the story of my institution. And so InstaFrostburg began as a hashtag in Instagram, obviously with the Insta part in the beginning. And basically what we did is we just put out a message on Facebook, on Twitter, inviting people to share a glimpse of something that they loved about Frostburg, something that made them feel close to Frostburg. It could be everything from a couple of alums getting married and, you know, writing FSU in the sand during their honeymoon, to a student group wanting to share an activity that they had coming up, and, you know, putting out an InstaFrostburg of like a flyer, but, you know, as an Instagram image. And because the visual web doesn't just limit itself to Instagram, it also took off, and it, you know, it was something that we started looking for on Twitter and on Tumblr, and now of course Facebook has the hashtag thing going on. But we share this content on a variety of formats. We have a Pinterest, we call it like an online gallery of all of our favorite InstaFrostburg images. We have obviously pictures that we retweet, and we have a Facebook album on our main university Facebook page where I add these InstaFrostburg images. And we also use them in ways within those communities, like we've had a lot of fun with using them as cover photos for our Facebook page. People really tend to like that. Sometimes we even use them in like campus-wide emails to promote our Spirit Day. There was a really cute one where we tied it into, you know, wear your Frostburg colors, wear your heart on your sleeve, and we got a fun staff picture of somebody in a t-shirt that said Frostburg on it, and we later used it in a campus-wide email to promote Spirit Day the next time around. So we kind of use it on a lot of formats, and we always credit the person. We always say, hey, check out their Tumblr blog, you know, check out their Instagram account by putting the Instagram handle or the Twitter handle, and it's just sort of a way to thread everybody together in a big conversation that happens across the web on a bunch of different social media sites. So it's been really fun.
Okay, great, great. Thanks for sharing that. And so Frostburg and University of Delaware, both of you guys shared examples with me about not just engaging your students on campus, but also when they're abroad. So at Frostburg, your students and some people went to Peru, and you did a multi-platform thing from there. And then Ryan, at UDel, you had kind of two related programs at Dare to Explore and Where in the World is UD. So Ryan, could you start and tell us a little bit about those two items?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. Dare to Explore is a campaign that we started about 3 years ago during winter session. No one's on campus, and it seems that nothing's going on. But we realized that there are students all over the world studying abroad, and for us stuck here back in Delaware, I mean, what better content would there be to see? So we started this program called Dare to Explore, where we get students to sign up to be global travel ambassadors. Global study ambassadors, I'm sorry, and they go around the world. They keep track of their travels on a blog, and then we use that content for our social media channels throughout the winter. It started out with just a few students involved, and then it grew to having over 130 global study ambassadors this past winter. And then that kind of changed. We decided we need to do something similar in the summer, so we changed it up a little bit. We still had global study ambassadors, but then we added in this a more interactive aspect for our audience at home, and that would be Where in the World is UD, where each student ambassador got one of these stuffed UDs. It's right behind me on my desk right there, and they each took one to wherever they were traveling, and then each had an assigned week where they had to send back a picture with UD in front of some kind of landmark, and then we would put that up on our Facebook page and ask our audience at home to guess where in the world is UD. So then it's kind of like not only are people seeing these amazing pictures from around the world, but then we're also keeping our engagement up throughout the summer when not a lot is going on during campus, and that's also been successful.
Okay, great idea. And did you get a lot of audience engagement, a lot of guesses?
We did. I mean, our reach we've seen, go up into the millions because of these campaigns. And
wow.
Like I said, in times when nothing seems to be going on. So they've been great campaigns for the winter and summer.
Okay, great. And Becca, what about in Peru? Could you tell us a little bit about how you kept your students engaged while they were away?
Sure. I just got back on August 3rd, so this is kind of fresh in my mind. Well, it was sort of funny. It resulted from having a lack of time and also just wanting to make sure students were sharing their stories. So what I did was I set up an Instagram account for the trip, and I invited all of our students and participants on the trip to use the FSU COB Peru hashtag. And so rather than sit down every night and ask students to share their images with me by hooking up their camera to my laptop, I could just look on Instagram by searching for that hashtag, and then I could upload those photos on my phone very quickly and easily onto our Instagram account, as well as tweet them out, as well as share them on the trip's Facebook page. The other fun thing we did is, I think there's always that challenge of making sure you're communicating what your students are learning when they're studying abroad, especially in a condensed, shortened trip. And so we had a Tumblr blog where the students were asked to take a picture every day and connect it to something that they read about international leadership in the course, because it was an online course that they took called Leadership in Latin America. And so they would share pictures each day on our Tumblr blog, and then there were some students who were enrolled in the class who didn't actually go on the trip but would comment on the photos that were shared. So it was all very mobile, and again, I used them on Facebook, and I haven't really used them on Pinterest yet, but we had fun on Facebook and Twitter using them. But the hashtag just made it really easy to get access and crowdsource the photos. And also, like I said, let the students' storytelling be a part of how they were experiencing the trip and learning about international leadership. And COB, by the way, and the hashtag stands for College of Business. This was with Frostburg State University's College of Business. They're really focused on globalizing their curriculum throughout our university, but they're really taking a proactive stance. And so it was very important as part of the marketing and branding of the experience to get that out there front and center as well, and use the content quickly and easily, because anybody who's been abroad with work or with their universities, you're you're doing a ton of things. I was taking pictures, I was taking video, I would look for news opportunities like through Twitter, tweet something to Peru this week, things like that. So I just needed everything to be very nimble and very crowdsourced and easy to use, and so that was a lot of fun. And one other thing I wanted to mention about that is on our Facebook page, an interesting kind of side effect is we met some really great college students at some of the universities we visited in Peru, and they liked our Facebook page, and even like the mayor and his I guess it was his general manager, they liked our Facebook page, so it became almost like this prospective student thing. Like, we're hoping that these students stay in touch with us and they'll come to Frostburg and enroll with us, and it's sort of like, everybody friends people they meet when they travel, but the Facebook page became sort of like a heart of, keeping that conversation going with the friends we met there long after we came back to the States. So it was really fun, yeah.
Oh, great. So I think anybody watching this, myself included, I think I'm going to ask my boss if I can go travel so I can do something cool with social media from abroad too. So those are great examples, and then we'll circle back to Hilary and back to the University of Michigan stuff, but you also have a way to engage prospective students and maybe get them talking to different people on campus by the hashtag #AskUMich. Could you talk a little bit about how that's going and what response you've gotten?
Yeah, absolutely. We started the hashtag #AskUMich with the central office and also the campus information, which would be the unions and anywhere that a student or a prospective student would go to ask questions in person. So we kind of got the idea, when students are here for orientation, it would be really great to have people answer all of their questions to, where can I go get a coffee, or how do I find the bus route to my dorm at such and such hour. So we started this kind of hashtag, and we posted flyers in all of the dorms that the students were staying in at orientation, and then had my office as well as the campus information interns, which I think there was about 10 of them, answering these questions, and we were trying to do it within the hour. So it was sort of a real-time engagement with these prospective students and incoming students, and then they were getting some of the perspective from the student interns that were behind the account, but then also from these knowledgeable sources that were working in the unions that could direct them where they needed to go. And it's something that we plan on continuing throughout the year. Hopefully, if any students have any questions, or even any people visiting campus have any questions about how to get around or where's a good place that they should check out on our campus, they could just use that hashtag and we'll get back to them pretty much right away.
Okay, great. So, so we talked about some things specifically for students, prospective and current. So now let's widen things out and talk about the greater community. I know a lot of us are using social media to engage audiences during live, real-time events, kind of like we're doing now with the hashtag HigherEdLive. So I know, and I don't know if Hilary and Ryan, if you knew this, but you're both doing a program with the same name, Tweet Seats. I just love that. And at E-Town, we had some reserved seats set aside, and they weren't front row for our E-team, but I think this is one takeaway for me, is the idea of the tweet seat. But could you talk a little bit about how that works? I know both schools might be set up a little differently, but Ryan, why don't we start with you?
Okay, yeah, sure. Tweet Seats at the University of Delaware, it kind of illustrates the community-wide, I guess, acceptance of our SMA program. It started out with our theater program when last year they came to us and they needed to get the word out about some shows that they were doing. So they reached out to us and said that they would provide tweet seats for some of our SMAs because they know each one of those have a few hundred followers each. So that's a whole other audience that they can reach that they weren't able to reach with only their social media accounts. So we did that for several performances last year, and it became successful. The SMAs love it. We call social media ambassadors SMAs, if I didn't say that already. They love it, and it's become so successful. Actually, our athletic director just asked us a few weeks ago if we could have several SMAs get VIP tweet seats to each football game this fall.
Nice.
So yeah, so it's expanding beyond the theater thing, and I mean everyone involved enjoys it, and we hope to keep doing it.
All right, great. And Hilary, you had mentioned that in your program, the people who sit in these tweet seats actually get a special cover for their phone so the audience isn't distracted. So that's pretty cool. So how did it come about at University of Michigan?
Ours was a similar program that was also through the theater, and it would be at most of the performances that could either be student or community performances at the Michigan Theater, and using the hashtag UMS Lobby and also UMich Arts, which are both performing arts hashtags that would typically be used. These 4 to 6 reserved seats would go to the show, and then they were able to actually tweet during the show and kind of live tweet what was going on, because they would set their phones to like the dimmest setting on the phone, and then have it on silent and have these little covers. I think they might have just been made out of cardboard, so they would be really easy to make for anyone, and so they would just tweet what was actually happening during the show. And we would have pretty much anyone that would be interested in doing it, or from the UMich handle, and then we would try to get some of the UMich students on to go to these performances as well.
Okay, great. And Becca, are you doing anything like this at Frostburg events?
Where we're inviting the campus community to, I'm sorry, can you re-ask
sure.
the question?
Yeah, and just live tweeting from events, whether it's through an official program like Tweet Seats or just something that you do regularly as part of social media coverage.
Absolutely. I was getting lost in the Twitter feed there. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's easy to do.
Well, actually, I guess we might be a tiny bit of a smaller shop than my colleagues here, but we definitely live tweet from things like Commencement, sometimes alum events. One fun thing we did is we did Ustream for Commencement, and we tweeted a Vine video of our president talking about how this was being live broadcast, and it was a Vine of him saying that of the screen, the monitor of him saying that at Commencement, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So that was kind of fun.
Meta.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun. Vine has been an interesting experiment at Frostburg State. We started it some months ago. We're trying to get more user-generated content on it. But yeah, we tweet at things like Fall Convocation, our president's state of address. And sometimes I'll reach out to my friends and my colleagues and students I know who are on Twitter and just say, hey, you guys, this is happening. Feel free to use this hashtag and help us get the word out. It's a little bit, it's very grassroots oriented most of the time. And then our students, my colleagues who do social media in other parts of Frostburg, and myself, we all have interns that will ask them to, basically live tweet different things that we do on campus. And it's a lot of fun. So.
All right, great. And something else really neat that I noticed when I was researching for this show, and I was on University of Social's blog, and I found out that the commencement speaker last year was actually Twitter CEO Dick Costolo, and I had a laugh when I saw this tweet, and we're going to send a link to it on the blog post, but there was just some banter going on about how's his graduation speech, is it going to be 140 characters long? So I just love the humor in that. But what was the response? I mean, I just can't imagine, live tweeting the speech of the person who's in charge of what we've all come to know and love. Can you tell us how the commencement went this year, Hilary, with his presence there?
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely overwhelming. It was obviously very exciting for me coming from, social media. There's nothing better than to have Twitter be at our commencement. We did the announcement that he was going to be speaking via Twitter. We had him tweet a link to the announcement. We started with the hashtag about a month out, and then just kind of built the excitement until leading up to commencement. We had it displayed on the tickets. We had it all over the place, and then we were actually streaming the tweets live on the big screens in the big house. So anybody that used the hashtag, we would put select tweets up on the huge screens, and people were taking pictures of that and tweeting them, and as soon as they were seeing that the tweets were up there, it was just overwhelming, the amount of tweets coming in and all the people that were just excited about it. We actually had was a national trending topic at one point during commencement, so that was really exciting. And then, of course, he started out his speech with a tweet, and he tweeted a picture of the stands, and then he said hashtag go blue at the end. So we happened to catch that on Vine as well, and that was, probably the most exciting moment of the year for us.
Oh, that's great. Well, since Becca brought up Vine, is that something, and Ryan, you did something with Vine too recently, right?
Yes, we just had our first ever Vine contest. After some research this summer, we decided to get on Vine And we've been doing it ourselves, and then we noticed that we were getting a lot of good feedback that there may be a community of UD Vine users. So we decided to do this contest. It was a week long, just asking people to tell us about their summer, and ask them to create a Vine video and use the hashtag UDVines. And being that it is such a new platform, and we had never really done anything officially with it before, it was great to see the response that we got. We were able to, we had a winner each day for 5 days, and the hashtag UDVines has actually caught on, so now people are continuing to use it. So that provides us with content, again, from our greater UD community.
Okay, all right, that's great. And so let's see. So, and then what about alumni and parents? We talked about the community, about students. Do you do anything specific for alumni or students? I'm sorry, alumni or parents? Either. You can just jump in there.
I think with alumni, and this is probably true for a lot of schools, I think pictures are always great at events, whether you're sharing them immediately, in real time, or you're putting together fun photo albums that you later tweet out from Facebook or put on Pinterest. I really think a key thing is answering questions, like when you get a fun comment from an alum. This happens a lot on our main university Facebook page. An alum will say, "Oh my gosh, I remember that bridge. That was such a fun place to go." And we try to chime in with something like, "Well, you should completely come back for homecoming. It'll be great to have you here." Maybe with a link to the information on our website about homecoming. I very much, and I'm sure my colleagues are sort of along the same lines, I'm really big on responsiveness and having a real conversation, not just one-way broadcasting on any social media platform. So I really think listening to alums and parents, parents will sometimes ask questions about their students, getting to your university, settling in. That's another opportunity to add in a comment, a helpful link, or give them a contact person to talk to. Same thing with Twitter. We have some alums on Twitter, and I built a Twitter list of our alumni. It's not huge just yet, but I like to go to it just to see what alums are tweeting. And it's not always obviously anything necessarily about Frostburg State, but I just like to know what they're interested in and what they're talking about on Twitter. And I think eventually, we haven't gotten here yet, but I've pitched the idea of forming like a group of volunteers who are alums, like social media savvy alumni who you can turn to and say, "Hey, we're trying to launch this new campaign. Here's some content to share. Can you help us get the word out?" It could be like a JPEG of a poster that they tweet out, or maybe it's like a hashtag that they use to promote homecoming. But are a huge audience to pay attention to on social media. So many of them, especially on Facebook, I'd say more than students nowadays, parents are very much on Facebook bragging about their kid, where they're going to school. There are a lot of parents who are paying more attention to their students than they did when maybe you and I were in college, Donna. So it's just helpful to give them ways to express their excitement about their student going to your institution, but also answer their questions and be attentive and resourceful so that they know that their child is going to have a great experience at your university. So
yeah. Today at eTown, it was move-in day for the first-year students, and it just student move-in volunteers, they design T-shirts every year, and this year I just was so proud that eTown has become such a social media savvy school, but they had a Twitter bird, and then they made it like a moving truck. So instead of saying, "How's my driving?" with the phone number, it said, "How's my moving?" And then it had the eTown move-in hashtag. So I thought that was pretty fun. But where I was getting with that is days like move-in day or homecoming, those are some real great times to reach out to the parents and sharing those pictures of, the moving and stuff like that. So there was a lot of misty eyes today at eTown on the social media feed there. Well, we talked about some things that worked, but I'd like to jump ahead and maybe see if there's anything that you've tried that you thought would be engaging, that you thought you would get a good response from, but maybe, I don't want to say it failed miserably, but maybe it had not as good results as you had hoped. So, Ryan, do you have any examples like that?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I could think about it.
Okay, I know I was putting you on nothing like putting you on the spot there, because
Yeah.
we want everything to work. But no, I was just wondering if
No, I mean there are times when you try something that doesn't work, but I mean that's when you have to be inventive and kind of turn it into something that does work.
Okay.
And I think that, I mean that's what I try to do. So.
All right, gotcha. And Hilary or Becca, anything that you thought might be a good opportunity, but it just didn't have great results?
I mean, of course, I have moments where, you know, you spend a half hour writing the perfect tweet and then nobody retweets it, and it's kind of just one of those moments of, I thought this was such good content and it's not as engaging as you thought. And I think a lot of times we're a lot more hard on ourselves and we see the engagement levels maybe aren't as popular as some other posts, but then there's things that you don't expect to catch on that really just take off. And so it's kind of just like a give and take of not being too hard on yourself and just going with it and saying, okay, my next tweet's going to be better.
Okay.
I think at Frostburg State, I'd say, I don't know if it was a failure exactly, but it was kind of mixed bag. I guess it was like 4 or 5 years ago, we did the whole YouTube contest thing where we invited our students and alums to share videos with us. And we actually got some really awesome YouTube videos from one of our alums who was like running her own video production company, and it was amazing, and we used it for marketing purposes for a while. But then we got some that, you know, the quality was maybe hard to work with. I'm a big fan of not worrying about things being too polished on social media, but there was like audio problems and things like that. So that was a little bit of a mixed bag, but we did that contest 2 times, and you know, the second time we got even more videos. So I think it's just always an experiment. And the second thing that's been kind of interesting is with Vine, we recently reached out to the class of 2017, and we tweeted out a Vine video from a couple people just saying, hey, introduce yourself in 6 seconds or less. And we did this hashtag on Vine, Frostburg 17, because we had seen that being used a lot by our students. And I haven't gotten a chance to really check it recently, but we hadn't gotten a ton of Vine videos yet. I think it'll happen, and I think we could probably promote it a little bit more, but I think maybe students were feeling a little bit shy. You know, 6 seconds, it's kind of a lot of creative pressure maybe. But alternately, we did do a Vine video of our Student Government Association president introducing herself and saying she can't wait to meet the class of 2017, and a ton of them just loved that, and we got some really good responses on that. So I think that was just a matter of maybe being a little bit shy, or maybe just that 6-second limit. That's one of the enticing, amazing things about Vine, but also the big creative challenge. But like I said, the YouTube contest, we got some great videos that we ended up using. It just wasn't a ton of videos, and you get into challenges like how do you get them to submit them, the formatting, things like that. It's just hard to wrangle it all together. But I think social media is always an experiment. You have to be open to like trying different things. If something doesn't work, you just shift gears, you try something else. It's not supposed to be perfection ever. It's supposed to be a conversation, which is spontaneous, you know, interactive. There's faux pas in conversations. There just are. So
yeah, great insight. And you know, on the time constraint thing, I remember when we probably were all constrained, how can I possibly say something in 140 characters? But yet we're doing it. So maybe the 6 seconds, there's still some hope for it. So now, oh yeah, and then, so we talked about getting students and the community involved, but what about wrangling in support from other areas? For example, Hilary shared an example with me that the School of, let me get the name right here, Michigan's College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, they have a YouTube channel where they share fun grammar tips, and the videos are really well done. So I was wondering how you mobilize faculty members and staff members to maybe participate in some of these social media endeavors. Hilary, could you talk a little bit about this YouTube series?
Yeah, I was not involved directly in the creation of that, but I know that one of our other faculty YouTube channels, which is Risk Bites, which is a professor who's doing explaining science questions with a whiteboard, that was just volunteer. And I'm guessing one like this, you know, it's just volunteer from our faculty and staff that want to share their expertise. And we do see a few faculty members that are on social media, that are on Twitter, really engaging with their students. And so they really just are eager to learn and to share, you know, what they have to deal with every day as an English professor of grammar questions asking over and over and over. So what better way to reach their students than to make a video? They can sit there for 2 minutes and figure out all of their questions all in one place.
That's great. And there's always going to need, to be a need for who versus whom, or it's versus it's, so they'll have some longevity. Now, Becca, you had wrote a blog post about, on the CASE blog, about, toward the end of the blog post, about getting faculty members involved so they can help teach students how to use social media better. And so I know it's kind of about engagement, but I just thought I would ask about it because I thought it was a really interesting concept.
Sure. There's something that is being widely circulated right now among student affairs professionals and others in higher ed. It's called digital identity development. And Eric Stoller, who some of you guys probably know about, he's great. I first read about that term in one of his blogs. State is taking the approach that it's really important to reach out to students and help them use social media responsibly and also learn from them and allow them to take a leadership role in how they're creating their identities online, whether it's things like cyberbullying or personal branding or privacy issues, or just things like how do you write a professional email. It's not the same thing as a text. And so we recently launched a blog. It's very much in its infant stages. It's on Tumblr, and it's called Frostburg Said, which stands for Students Assessing Identity Development. And the goal is to invite our faculty, particularly our educators who teach our first-year students, to invite those first-year students in their introduction to higher education classes to look at some of the issues that we've started sharing on that blog and help us grow the resources on there, like go online and see what they can find out about cyberbullying or about how do you get ready for a job search with your social media accounts. And faculty play a great role in that because they are actively teaching the students. People like myself, I'm a marketing and communications person and I guest lecture and I'd love to teach more at some point, but I'm not teaching actively all the time. So it helps to form an alliance with faculty, and a lot of faculty are already doing this. Like in our College of Business, in a marketing class, they might have a segment on social media, but the difference between a major in social media in the College of Business and something that's a fundamental part of the curriculum, we're kind of going for the latter, making it something that all students think about and learn about with the help of our faculty and staff, and our alumni even. I mean, we really think it can be a collective process. So that's kind of a new thing, and we're building up the links on that blog. It's kind of brand new, launched last week, but we presented it to to our educators who teach our first-year students, and we got a really positive response. So our goal is that hopefully they'll incorporate it into their courses that they're doing with these students, and invite our students to take a leadership role in helping us figure this out and helping themselves figure it out too. So.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And so something that we get asked often in our field is how do we measure what we do? And sometimes, it's really anecdotal. We see stories that give us the warm and fuzzies, but sometimes it's also about numbers. So how do you measure what's successful? And do you do your own thing? Are you tying them to strategic objectives at your university? So I just want to find out how you gather and use any data. Ryan, why don't we start with you?
Sure. At the University of Delaware, we measure success by measuring reach. Instead of how many Facebook likes we have or how many Twitter followers we have, we will go through and we'll find the reach, which I'm sure everyone here knows, and but just for anyone who might not, who's watching, reach would be the number of people who have seen anything related to your page, like a post that you put out, and if someone likes it or comments on it, it's all of their followers who see it. So we think that if we're coming up with good content, and of course is in line with the university's goals and campaigns that are going on in real life, and we're coming up with good content that people are interacting with, sharing, liking, commenting on, retweeting, and then that reach grows, and that's how we measure success.
Okay. What about you, Hilary, at Michigan?
Yeah, there's a variety of ways, I guess you could say, we measure success with the UMich Students account in specific. You know, it's hard because it's a different student every week, so we're never going to know how the student's going to perform, and of course we're not going to put that sort of pressure on them. And it is a bit of the following. You know, the account's been around for about a year, and it has over 4,500 followers now, so that's obviously a sure tell sign. With our other channels, we also look at beyond just how many people like our page, how many people are following us, because we have such a large alumni base, we have such a large fan base of people that like the University of Michigan who didn't even go to school here. We kind of, you know, we look at engagement, we look at likes, comments, and shares on specific posts, how they're performing, we look at reach, and then we just look at how are we doing as an institution as a whole in social media? How are we being viewed by the higher education community? How are we being viewed by the social media community? And the ranking that, you know, you mentioned at the beginning of us being collaborative in both social media and higher education is really a win for us.
Okay, great. And my next question is, and Becca, you had talked about fragmentation, and you shared this really great blog post you wrote that had to do about gremlins. You know, it should be like Gizmo, but if you feed him after midnight, he turns into, you know, a gremlin. And so I wanted to talk about, you know, can we overengage? If we have too many social media outlets and too many accounts, do we run the risk of people not wanting to follow anything we're doing because there's too much to follow? So maybe, Becca, you could start, since it was something you wanted to talk about, and then we'll see what Hilary and Ryan have to say.
Sure. I do think overfragmentation is a problem, and I have very much become an advocate of do not throw up Facebook pages, Twitter accounts, Pinterest accounts, YouTube channels for every single program and division on campus, because people don't know where to pay attention to online when you do that. And when you think about conversations that happen organically, like with different people just kind of spontaneously discovering things, you need to have a lot of different people in the room to make that happen. And that metaphor applies to like one main university Facebook page, maybe a couple of solid Twitter accounts, maybe one Pinterest account. One way that we've kind of worked on getting our campus on board with this is we have an editorial calendar that we put together each semester for our different social media communities. And it can be helpful to say, well, hey, it sounds like an interesting idea to do a Facebook page for, you know, your program, but what about if you sent me something every week that I share through our editorial calendar as part of this feature that I do every Wednesday? So that helps a lot. The flip side of that is we really do want to empower our campuses to take a role in being ambassadors on our social media communities. So it's not that we want to, you know, deter people from doing their own pages and their own Twitter accounts, but we want to kind of streamline it a little bit so it's not too wild, wild west. So the other approach is there are departments on our campus that have done really good Facebook pages where, you know, they're actively posting content. They've done a really wonderful job of connecting with students. So I've done things like gone to chairs meetings and just kind of acknowledge, hey, your department's doing an amazing job as like part of a presentation. And I think professors really like hearing that, you know, they're doing a good job. It doesn't hurt to stroke people's egos, whether it's a faculty member or staff member or student. And so acknowledging the people who are doing it well, so at least to like support best practices. But I am definitely on board with do not throw up a Facebook page for everything ever, especially because demographically we know that students aren't necessarily trying to connect with universities on Facebook as much as they used to. They may be on there for a lot of reasons, but I honestly don't think that students are trying to like learn from, I don't know, some program's Facebook page as much as they used to. So.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. And I guess we're kind of getting down here to the wire, so I guess we could hear from you know, your final thoughts. It's either what's the #1 lesson you've learned, or the #1 takeaway that you have from you know, that you might want to share with your colleagues at other schools. So, Ryan, why don't we start with you? Any closing arguments?
Arguments? I don't think so. I would just say,
just a little
I mean, what I always try to think about when I'm doing my day-to-day job, I just try to keep social media social. I think interaction is very important. It's not just one-way communication. It's not a news service. And I think if you can keep that, if you can keep your posts and your content interesting and engaging, you'll see that interaction, and that'll help. I mean, that'll help the university. That'll help you grow your follower base, and yeah, I just say keep it social.
Okay, good advice. Hilary?
You know, I would say the same as that. Be engaging, whether it's, you know, on Facebook and alumni saying, I really love all of these historical photos that you're posting of the university, or we've had incoming students on Twitter say, I'm going to the University of Michigan because they tweet me back. Like, just be there for your students, be there for your alumni community, and be social with them. Let them know that if they tweet you, if they post to you, you're going to respond to them, and you actually really care about them, and foster that relationship in a one-on-one way, even though it is such a big institution that they're reaching out to.
Okay, great. And Becca?
I agree with Hilary and Ryan. I think listening and responding to people, I think user-generated content is great when you pull in the creativity of the people who love you and know you the best, like your students, alumni, parents, etc. And I think visual is always great. I don't post or tweet anything if I can help it without some sort of picture, because I just think it's great at getting attention, and it illustrates your story that you're trying to tell, or your news release, or whatever it is, your question. So, engagement.
All right, so engagement is key, and we heard some great examples of what 3 different schools and 3 different areas are doing. And make sure you check out the hashtag Higher Ed Live tonight, because there might be some chatter and sharing going on shortly after we sign off here. But I want to thank Becca, Hilary, and Ryan for joining me tonight, some on short notice, and I want to thank Higher Ed Live for asking me to guest host, so it was really fun. So you can join us next Thursday night on Higher Ed Live. Mayan Plott will talk competency-based learning programs with Brent Capriati, and Mayan is just awesome, so you have to tune in next week for her. And I guess that is it. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.